Today we want to replace the service kit or diaphragm in a Jobe valve. Today we're going to use a Topaz valve, but this would work for a Megaflow. So either the Megaflow or Topaz valves made by Jobe Valves out of New Zealand. To do this you need a #1 square drive bit and possibly a flathead screwdriver depending on how you have your valve set up. This one I've chosen the most complicated setup, which is a Topaz using the extension arm. The diaphragm sits inside of here, and we have a replacement diaphragm kit which we'll get into in a minute. But to do this we need a flathead screwdriver in this case to remove the arm from the valve. So I'm just going to rotate these around. There's two flat bolts that hold this arm in place, and that's really the only time that you need a screwdriver, is to remove these two screws if you have the arm attached. I don't have to remove it, but for servicing it does make it a lot easier. Without it, I can now see all 6 of the #1 square drive screws that hold the valve together. The service kits come with a small manual, hand gadget for taking these off. Since I'm going to be doing this, I decided to just get one from the local hardware store. I got one and I've attached it to my cordless drill, which makes it an awful lot easier. So I'm just going to take these 6 screws off from here. With those 6 screws off, the valve comes apart in 2 pieces basically. We have a front and a back. And there's our diaphragm. It's the only thing on the inside really. Diaphragm has a little filter on it. You'll want to save this filter. It doesn't come with a replacement one. The only thing that comes in the kit is just the new diaphragm. So as you can see, you just get a new diaphragm and you put that in. The things we want to look for in replacing our diaphragm is the debris that might be stuck in the filter. I want to make sure that that's working properly, that it moves back and forth freely. Sometimes debris gets up underneath the filter and it causes this pin to not want to work or move back and forth. Little calcium or iron builds up on it. You want to make sure that that's working freely, and then that's ready to go back in. It just sits there and gets pinched on. But since you're going to service one, if you're going to do it, you really have to make sure that this part here is also clean. There's as I move this in and out with the arm, you want to make sure there's nothing holding that back or hindering it, keeping that from sealing up properly. And then basically we're going to just put it back together like this and put those screws back in place. And that's how easy it is to service the Topaz or Megaflow valves, and pretty much just making sure that the debris is out of them as we do it. This valve's nice and clean, so there is no debris to scrub out, but you could scrub that debris out if need be. Probably cut this out. Alright, my valve is now back together. It's ready to go. I'm going to service one more thing on this as long as I've got it apart. This part's just a hair more complicated, and that is I want to service underneath here, make sure that this arm is working properly. There's 2 screws that hold that in place. They hold the whole front end on. So I'm just going to take my #1 square drive bit. I'm going to remove those 2 small screws. Oops. And as you can see, that it kind of wants to pop off on its own. That's fine. This nose comes off, and it's important to kind of focus on how this goes together because you have to put it back together. You just gently pull this off. There's 2 rocker bearings here. You just have to make sure that you get those back on facing forward. You see how they slide right onto that. and that's how they do that. So you just want to make sure you kind of remember how that goes. But the thing that we're looking for here is take the spring off and any dirt or debris that can get stuck around this start pin. If this start pin cannot move in and out freely, it's going to cause problems. Mine's nice and clean, so I'm going to put the spring back on. I'm going to put my rocker arm and the float arm back on. I'm going to put this cap on, and you have to slide the cap over, get it over this Frost Pro plug, and then it kind of snaps down into place. And then you have to put these two little screws back in and just gently tighten these on. There's no real force holding these in. Some people try to really tighten these in too tight. You just really want to snug them on like that. And the valve now back. Make sure the arm's working. It should move up and down freely without any real resistance. The Topaz valve is then ready to be put back in. I'm going to attach the arm back onto it. That was the installation that I had. This is for an above water mounting. I just put my two screws or bolts back, tighten them on, and the valve's ready to go back into the trough. And there it is, ready to go.